Okay, if you don't know, I can tell you an ode is a lyrical poem which is having some intense emotions in which the writer is lamenting or celebrating something. That is going to be one of the definitions of odes. So today we talk about Percy Bysshe Shelley's poem Ode to the West Wind. And if you can see for a quick look, there are 5 sections of the poem. Now in some places you'll find that they are calling it stanza wise, and in some places you'll find cantos. Now both these are the structural points of poems, so we are going to take them as cantos: canto 1, canto 2, 3, 4 and 5, and within each canto we have 5 stanzas. For example, the first stanza is of 3 lines, the second stanza is of 3 lines, and next same goes for it. As far as the message is concerned, this entire poem is about the nature of the wind, how this natural phenomena, west wind to be precise, has some kind of dual personality. It is also a destructor and a preserver. It is a friend, it is also a foe. There are 2 contrasting images that Shelley is going to portray in this poem. As far as the speaker of the poem is concerned, the speaker is the poem is somebody who loves nature, who is in love with nature, who worships nature. And this poem is written in 19th century. So look at the first stanza in canto 1. O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being, thou from whose unseen presence the leaves dead are driven like ghosts from an enchanter flame. I'm going to read an explanation from the Gale study that I've shared in the morning again. In the first 14 lines, I would like to ask you to name each line, each verse in the poem. At the end, that will help you identify where we are. If you line them, number them up. Each line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that will help you. So first 14 lines, which means first canto. In the first 5 of the 5 sections of the poem, the speaker begins to define the domains and the powers of west wind. While stanza 2 addresses the wind's influence on the sky, stanza 3 discusses its effects on the sea. Stanza 1 describes the wind's effects on the land. The autumn breezes scatter dead leaves and seeds on the forest soil, where they eventually fertilize the earth and take root as a new growth, both destroyer and preserver. In the very first canto, we have these words, destroyer and the preserver. This is in line 14. If you look at the last line of first canto, destroyer and the preserver, here, oh here. So we get to know that the nature has been depicted in both perspective, destroyer and preserver. The wind ensures the cyclic regularity of the seasons. These themes of regeneration and interconnectedness of death and life, endings and beginnings, runs through Ode to the West Wind. Again, compare and contrast. Starting and ending, right? Regeneration and death, revitalization, rebirthing. All these words are going to be used time and again in the entire poem. The wind is, of course, more than simply a current of air or air. In Greek and Latin languages, which Shelley was familiar, because as a child he learned a lot of languages, including French, Greek and Latin, because his father had a library and he used to go there. The words for wind, inspiration, soul, spirit are all related. Shelley's west wind thus seems to symbolize an inspiring spiritual power that moves everywhere and affects everything. That is the beauty of nature, and that is also the eco-critical perspective of nature, where everything affects everything else. Our actions, natural phenomena, disasters, celebrations, everything affects everything. We make a building, we build a building, we have an effect on nature. Nature becomes flooded or there are heavy rains, we are affected. Somehow all people involved in this game, we can call it a game or life for that matter, everything affects everything else, and that is what we are going to look at in this particular poem. Look at lines number 2 and 3. Thou from whose unseen presence the leaves dead are driven like ghosts from an enchanter flame. These lines suggest that like a sorceress might frighten away spirits, the wind scatters leaves. Now wind is having a capacity and capability of moving these natural dead leaves. They are there, right? And the natural phenomena of wind is able to move them. But one might also interpret leaves dead as forgotten books and ghosts as writers of the past. In this sense, the winds of inspiration make way for new talent and ideas by driving away the memories of the old. Now, we can have two layered meanings for the poem. Within the first three lines, we get to know that we are talking about nature, the natural phenomena, that there are dead leaves, and the wind is, moving them. The other underlying meaning, the deep meaning, could be that it is about the poetic journey that these romantics have been talking about for a long time. They refer to dead leaves as the forgotten books because of industrialization and development and everything changing, becoming scientific, robotic, and materialistic. Everything was being forgotten, everything was being taken for granted, and that is what he's highlighting over here as well. And the ghosts are those people who are no more. They are not in the reality. They are in the past or memory or some kind of reminiscence is there. Their shadow is there, but their physical form or their certain form is not there. And he is referring to writers and these writings as being forgotten and like ghosts. So we have two levels of interpretation. The first one is the natural one, the apparent one that you can see, and the second one is the deep one where he is lamenting upon the loss of writers and these topics. This is your first stanza. Then line number 4 to 5. Yellow and black and pale and hectic red, pestilence stricken multitudes, O thou. The colors named here might simply indicate the different shades of the leaves. Now, the autumn leaves that he has mentioned in the first stanza are yellow, black, or hectic red. Have you ever seen autumn leaves? Of course, they have this crunchy voices as well. I used to enjoy, as a child, I would walk in them and I would enjoy those, crunch voices that it would make. Have you ever tried that?
Yes.
Have you ever, tried to gather them and, up in the air? So that is how we associate our happy memories with autumn. Let's see what they have to say. So these different colors indicate shades of leaves, but it is also possible to interpret the leaves as symbols of humanity's dying masses. See, 3 different colors, yellow, black, and hectic red. If humans die, let's talk about human dying. First we turn into yellowish color, then we have bluish color, and then eventually we will turn to the reddish kind of. Our blood circulation is stopped, therefore blood जगह जगह पर pouches में जमा हो जाता है skin, and eventually you turn black. This is how a person dies, a human dies. But if we talk about the leaves, first they are green, then they are a little we can call them yellowish or brownish, maybe in between there is a color, I don't know what do we call that color, and then eventually it becomes red and then it vanishes as well. It is broken into pieces. So this is the kind of imagery that this particular poet Bysshe Shelley is using over here to draw our attention towards the dying masses, how people are going away, they are dying. In this analysis, the colors represent different cultures: Asian, African, Caucasian, and Native American. So now cultural aspect is also there. And you do know for a fact that there is a very big war since the day I was born between the blacks and the whites and the browns and the pinks and whatnot. And there is a huge movement of people of color, and black movement is there. So all those cultural differences on the basis of colors is also being depicted over here. And in the name of this color discrimination, masses have died already. They have faded away. They have lived in their lives. They have lived their lives in shadows, right? This idea is supported by the phrase "each like a corpse within its grave" in line 8, that could indicate that each person takes part in the natural cycle of life and death. Now the lines 4 and 5, they are making a connection with line number 8, that is in stanza 3, and how they are interconnected. You need to understand that each canto is connected with each other, and each stanza within the canto is connected with each other. Time and again, literature is beautiful that way, that we can always make connections with the previous and the future points that are going to be there. So you have to keep this in your mind, that human beings and these leaves and everything, they go through a process, they die, and then there is revitalization again. Once a tree is out of leaves and it is just the tree now, eventually another spring or another season would come and bring the leaves back. So that is how civilizations are made as well. That is how a millennial, or we can say a decade, fades away. In which we can have societal, cultural, personal, psychological, emotional changings as well. If we compare ourselves, or you can compare yourselves with the children of 90s, and you guys are from 20s, right? You were born after 20s. So if you compare and contrast, you'll see clear differences. Many people have died, many people have left their fundamental ideas towards life, approaches have been changed, and whatnot. So this is the cycle of life and death that is he's trying to contrast and compare in the first stanza and the second one. Then line 6 to 7. Who chariotist, which is chariot, we can call it chariot, who chariot to their dark wintry bed, the winged seeds where they lie cold and low. Here the wind is described as a chariot that carries leaves and seeds to the cold earth. The comparison gives the impression that the wind has some of the aspects of those who are associated with chariots, gods, and powerful rulers. Again, the beauty and the power of wind to be able to move the leaves from one point to another and provide some kind of coverage to the earth is being depicted with the same kind of depiction which could be there in the human beings as well. The rulers or the people with money, they can protect the poor people or the earth, or they can destroy them. Isn't that so? Similarly, godly powers, they can do whatever they want to do. Thomas Hardy has said something, I don't remember the exact words, but I can summarize it for you, that gods in their free time, they play with us like a wanton boy. A wanton boy is a careless or free boy and who would enjoy with everything and anything. So that particular thought process could be implied over here as well, that the wind, the west wind, has the capacity of either a god or a powerful ruler who can change the fate of the leaves being human beings. So this is how you have two layers of interpretation in Ode to the West Wind. Then line 8. Each like a corpse within its grave until. The leaves are personified as people within their graves, an image that harkens back lines 4 and 5. We have just talked about line 4 and 5, and it is the connection to the line 8, where the leaves are considered as diseased multitudes of people. Right? Then line 9 to 12. Thine azure sister of the spring shall blow her clarion over the dreaming earth and fill, driving sweet buds like flocks of feet in the air with living hues and adores plains and hills. In Greek and Roman mythology, first we talked about the nature, the apparent reason that we can do with the text. Then we talked about the second layer of meaning, where we talked about cultures, humans and rurals and gods. Now we are moving forward to the Roman mythology, because Shelley himself had read a lot of Roman, Greek, Latin and etc. So he had much knowledge about it. Therefore, most of his points that perhaps he did not think that way, but people are able to interpret it in the light of Latin or Greek mythology. So in Greek and Roman mythology, the spring west wind was masculine. Masculine is manly, as was autumnal wind. Here the speaker refers to the spring wind as a feminine wind, perhaps to stress its role as a nurture and life giver. She is pictured as awakening nature with the energetic clarion, which is a type of medieval trumpet. So Shelley, being a romantic, is going beyond the normal norms where they would always consider man to be the center of attention. Here he believes that nature is a female because it's a life giver, it is a nurturing or nurse kind of a force out there, and women in human life, they are like that. And you must have observed this in your households as well, where your mothers, they take care of everyone around them. Regardless of their own health and everything, they would give away their own peace and night and you name it. There is a long list that you'll find, and nature is the same. It offers too many things. It offers protection, shadow, fruit, eatables and whatnot. So he's comparing nature and these natural phenomena with the woman who can provide all this. Then line number 13 to 14. wild spirit, which art moving everywhere, destroyer and preserver, here, oh here. At the conclusion of the first stanza or canto, the speaker identifies the wind as the powerful spirit of nature that incorporates both destruction and continuation of life. In fact, these two processes are said to be related. Without destruction, life cannot continue. At the end of the line 14 is the phrase "oh here" that will be repeated at the end of stanza 2 and 3 as well. That is canto 2 and 3 as well. This refrain emphasizes sound, which seems appropriate given that wind and invincible force, the poem's central subject. So all in all, the first canto, the first stanza, or we should call it canto, or the part of this poem is based on how nature is a destructor and a preserver, and then there is a depiction of, or we can say imagery of, different kinds of layers of meanings. One is the apparent one, the surface meaning, and the other one is the deep meaning, in which we looked at that how he has mentioned the dying poets and the masses are dying, and how these colors of autumn leaves, they represent many things such as death and life and the circle of regeneration and rebirthing. So this is first stanza for you. Look at this second canto, line 15 to 28. So this is the introduction. Usually this Gale study gives an introduction and then goes line by line. So line 15 to 28. In stanza 2 or canto 2, the wind helps the clouds shed rain as it had helped the trees shed leaves in stanza 1. In stanza 1, the shedding was of leaves. Now we have rain. You can mark your stanzas. With first stanza, write leaves, and with the second canto, write rain. So that you remember that first we are talking about leaves and then we are talking about rain. Just as dead foliage nourishes new life in the forest soil, so does the rain contribute to the nature's regenerative cycle. Without the water, nothing can be regenerated. Those autumn leaves, which actually covers the entire earth and brings, and these dead leaves can bring life again. Sometimes they are very much fruitful in the end. They are in the soil and then they grow up to be another kind of a, or the same kind of a tree eventually. So they are talking about this regenerative cycle. You should be able to use these words in your interpretations if you're given a chance, such as rebirth, regeneration, and etc. Then line 16 to 18. Let's talk about loose clouds like earth's decaying leaves are shed, shook from the tangled boughs of heaven and ocean. Angels of rain and lightning there are spread. This passage has been heavily attacked by critics like Lewis for its lack of concreteness and apparently disconnected imagery. So these two lines, 16 to 18, 3 lines, are being criticized by this person, F.R. Lewis, Leavis, for its lack of concreteness. The images are disconnected. They seem to have no connection with each other. Others have cited Shelley's knowledge of science and the possibility that these poetic phrases might indeed be based on natural fact, because he was a man of scientific experimentation as well. Shelley himself, he was into experimentation. Perhaps that is the reason he mixed his own feelings and interpretations with the facts that he has already been knowing for a long time. The loose clouds, for example, are probably cirrus clouds of rain. As the leaves of stanza 1 have been shed from the boughs, these clouds have been shaken from the heavier and cloud masses of boughs or heaven and ocean. Line 17 mentions boughs of heaven and oceans. In Latin, cirrus means curl or lock of hair. It is thus appropriate that these clouds resembles Maenad's bright hair are referred as to the locks of approaching storm. Now, locks of women, especially, you must have read that Rape of the Lock. The entire play is based on that lock. So, lock represents a lot of things in Greek and Roman and Latin mythology, and that is what he's trying to share with us over here as well. Then, line 20 to 23. Like the bright hair lifted from the head of some furious Maenad, even from the dim verge of the horizon of the zenith height. Again, the lock of a woman that they are saying. So, the interpretation is when Shelley was in Florence, he saw a relief sculpture of 4 Maenads. These worshippers of Roman gods of wine and vegetations. I hope you know that in Roman mythology, Greek mythology, Latin mythology, or Hindi mythology, they have many gods. All kinds of gods are there. They worship natural phenomena. They worship any kind of god for any kind of benefit that they can get out of it. So they are talking about the god of vegetation over here, which is Bacchus in Greek mythology, and Dionysius called, were wild dancing women with streaming hair. Again, those locks. If a woman is dancing, their locks will dance as well. Just like the wind is able to twirl the leaves on the ground and they are dancing. जब एक wind आती है और एक cluster की तरह जाती है, तो वो जो सारे leaves होते हैं वो एक औरत तो नहीं कहना चाहिए, लेकिन एक feminine touch देता है, that there is a dance going on. जिसको वो जो आजकल एक डांस फॉर्म है ना, वेरी पर्टिकुलरली जिसको बेली डांसिंग कहते हैं, उसमें किस तरह से एक फीमेल या मेल भी, आई हैव सीन मेल्स डांसिंग विद देयर बेलीज एंड एवरीथिंग. सो एक बहुत एक रिदमिक किस्म का एक डांस होता है. सिमिलरली नेचर हैज़ दैट रिदम एज वेल, एंड दैट रिदम इज बीइंग डिपिक्टेड थ्रू द डांसिंग ऑफ द लीव्स and the rain. Rain also has that certain kinds of ways to pour on us. कभी रेन इस साइड की होती है, कभी इस साइड की होती है, कभी बिल्कुल सीधी होती है और कभी दोनों तरफ से आती है. सो यू सी हाउ नेचर, द नेचुरल फिनोमेना ऑफ रेन कैन पोर its heart out on you from all perspectives. It is able to cover you like the autumn leaf from all perspectives. I hope you are able to co-join these two contrasting and yet similar images with each other, that be it leaves or rain, both of them, they are able to protect, preserve, or destroy or impact somehow the natural phenomena or human beings. Okay, so we were talking about line number 23? 22, okay. Here the speaker compares the appearance of the cirrus clouds streaked across the horizon within the mains blown tresses. This image seems especially appropriate in that Bacchus or Dionysius is associated with the natural world, and the wind and the clouds are primary elements of nature. So this is written in a very dense English. Whatever I've just told you is the same interpretation. You can go with that. Then line 23 to 28. The locks of the approaching storm, thou dirge of the dying year, to which this closing night will be dome of a vast sculpture, vaulted with all thy congregated might of vaporous from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hail will burst, O hear. The wail of the wind is compared to a song of grief, as it were mourning the dying year. As the year draws to a close, nature prepares for the funeral. The coming night is described as a spectacular, a burial tomb that will be marked by lightning and hail from a storm. This last day will end in darkness under storm clouds. So you see, the second canto, or you can call it a big stanza within 5 stanzas within it, it talks about again the rain and how rain is able to conclude the entire season for human beings. Rain is able to, for example, when we are in scorching heat and rain comes along, the dust goes away, many other problems that are there, the allergies that we have, the respiratory infections that we have, they go away, and we are revitalized, we are not generated, but we are back and on the track. So this is how nature works as well. So first stanza is based on leaves, the natural phenomena of leaves. The second one is on rain. Then we have canto number 3, in which we have lines 29 to 42. In stanza 3 or canto 3, the west wind wields its power over the sea, but unlike the first two stanza, this one is introduced by an image of calm, peace and sensuality. The first one, leaves or autumn leaves, they were not depicted as something sensual, but they were feminine. That is what the author has said over here. The second one is rain, and it has the capacity to impact human beings. But the third one, the one that we are going to read right now, is introduced by an image of calm, peace and sensuality. The Mediterranean Sea is pictured as smooth and tranquil, sleeping alongside the old Italian town of Bai, once a playground of Roman emperors. Bai sunk as the result of volcanic activity and is now the bed of lush underwater garden. But the wind can also waken the sea and disturb the summer tranquility of the waters by ushering in an autumn storm. Again, something that is set by humans, and how these emperors used to play in this town of Base, and they had this playground and underwater garden was sleeping and everything, but the west wind is able to change it. The wind will be able to awake it in some way. Now look at line 32 to 33. Beside a pumice isle in Bays Bay, and saw in sleep old palaces and towers. In 1818, Shelley himself had sailed past the Bay of Bay. In a December letter to Thomas Love Peacock, he enthusiastically described the ruins of its antique grandeur standing like rocks in the transparent sea under our board. Thomas Love Peacock was another famous writer. He has written, I believe, novels. You will have to check. So he's from Romantic era as well. Then line 36 to 38. So sweet the sense faints picturing them thou, for those part the Atlantic leaven's powers, cleaves themselves into chasms while far below. If you remember, Coleridge also used the word chasm, and he's using it too. Let's see how does he use it. In which sense does he use it? Beginning at the end of line 36, the speaker disrupts the peace of seascape and reminds the west wind of its power to churn up wild white-capped surf. Now, as we have already established the fact that west wind has a capacity of making or changing certain phenomena, natural phenomena, such as moving the leaves, moving the raindrops, and etc. Similarly, here they are talking about that how the speaker of the poem wants the west wind to wake up and take charge of its power and be mindful about its own power, that these are the things that it can do. So it is a conversation between the speaker of the poem, who is a worshipper of nature. He or she is addressing the west wind and asking, or perhaps pleading, that you should come and wake all these natural phenomena up. Then line 39 to 42. The sea blooms, and the oozy woods which wear the shapeless foliage of the ocean know thy voice, and suddenly grow grey with fear, and tremble and despoil themselves, O here. Again, O here is being repeated over here. The lush sea foliage, which is shapeless because the plants are underwater, is aware of the wind's ability to destroy, remembering the havoc of cold weather storms. The vegetation is drained of color as the person turns pale with fear, or as plant life on earth fades in fall. In a note to these lines, Shelley wrote, the vegetation at the bottom of the sea, of rivers and lakes, sympathizes with that of the land in the change of season, and is consequently influenced by the winds which announces it. The natural cycle of death and regeneration thus continues even underwater with the aid of west wind. So the third canto is based in underwater vegetation. You can jot it down. What do we get through the deep layers of oceans or sea? What kind of benefits are there? What kind of vegetation could be there? Any idea? चलिए सिंपली बताएं हमें पानी से क्या कुछ मिलता है. एक तो पानी मिल रहा है, फर्टिलिटी मिलती है, और द ग्रीन मॉस जो वहाँ एल्जाई होती है उसका भी एक यूटिलिटी होती है. इट हेल्प्स इन मैनी वेज. इसी तरह से जो सी के जो प्लांट्स होते हैं, सर्टन किस्म के प्लांट्स जो कि अंडर वाटर ही ग्रो करते हैं, दे हैव अदर प्रॉपर्टीज़ विच कुड बी यूज इन मैनी अदर थिंग्स सच एज मेडिसिन्स, सच एज सम काइंड ऑफ रेमेडी और सम काइंड ऑफ प्रोडक्शन. कहीं ना कहीं उनकी कोई ना कोई यूटिलिटी है. और वहाँ पर एक इमेज भी है जो अभी हमने देखी भी थी, जहाँ पर शेले ने लिखा भी है that he is able to see something under the water as an entire world of its own, जहाँ वो पीकॉक को बता रहा है, लेफ्ट पीकॉक को बता रहा है, ठीक है. सो और इसके बारे में फैक्ट्स पढ़ना चाहें थोड़ा सा पढ़ लें, ठीक है, तो ताकि आपको पता चले कि आप इसमें और क्या लिख सकते हैं. सो वी वर ऑन लाइन नंबर 42. 42 was done and we were on which line was it? 42 is done, right? So the 42, line 39 to 42 talks about the vegetation of all the plants and everything that is underwater, and how west wind can either make them, keep them, preserve them, develop them, or destroy them. Then line 43 to 56. Canto 4 has started. If I were a dead leaf, thou mightest bear. If I were a swift cloud to fly with thee, a wave to pant beneath thy power and share. Now let's read the introduction to this canto. After 3 stanzas or cantos of describing the west wind's power, which are all echoed in the first 3 lines of stanza 4, the speaker asks to be moved by this spirit. For the first time in the ode to the west wind confronts humanity in the form of speakers of the poem. So finally, in Canto 4, we are able to see some kind of address of humanity over here. Right? No longer an idealistic young man, the speaker has experienced sorrow, pain, and limitations. He stumbles even as he asks to be spiritually uplifted. At the same time, he can recall his younger years when he was tameless and swift and proud like the wind. These recollections help him to call on the wind for inspiration and new life. In this manner, the poem suggests that humans too are part of never-ending natural cycle of death and rebirth, and that is correct, right? Now, line 47 to 52. Then thou, O uncontrollable, if even I were as in my boyhood and could be, the comrade of thy wanderings over heaven, and as then went to outstrip the sky speed, Saccharus seemed the vision I would never have striven. In line 47, the speaker begins to explain that in his idealistic youth, he used to race the wind and win in his own mind. But now, as an older man, he could never imagine challenging the west wind or the power that this west wind has. Then line 53 to 54. O lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud, I fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed. In these well-known lines, often mocked by Shelley's detractors or critiques, the patterns of sea, earth and sky are recalled as the speaker asks to be raised from his sorrows by the inspirational west wind. He seems almost Christ-like in the suffering, like the thorns of life, recalling the crown of thorns worn by Christ during the crucifixion. Now there is a religious impact, or we can say religious reference over here. Do you know what happened to Christ? How was he crucified? Why was he crucified?
They say it's for the sins of people. He died for their sins.
You know for a fact that Christ was a preacher. He used to preach, and many people did not approve of his preaching styles or preaching altogether. They did not want him, get in their materialistic ways. So in order to showcase it to them that he's truthful and he's saying the truth, he was crucified on a cross. Cross, you already know. There are 3, I think it's called Holy Trinity, in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. ये 3 इनकी ये कह लें ये इस तरह करके इनका एक्शन होता है. ये आपको पढ़ना पड़ेगा. I don't want to tell you incorrectly because it was a long time ago when I read about it. So you will have to read about the Trinity, the Holy Trinity of Christians. How do they greet or pray to their God? So these 3 things, they definitely talk about the regeneration or rebirthing of Christianity. The religion of Christianity was, after this crucifixion, became very popular, and it was spread throughout many places within England and outside England. It cherished. So that is again, our life was gone, our life was surrendered, and in return, what did they get? A revitalization of a religious perspective. Similarly, West Wind has the capacity to regenerate these perspectives that we have just talked about. Then line 55 to 56, a heavy weight of ours has changed and bowed, one too like thee, tameless and swift and proud. The Christ-like image of the speaker continues here. His life experiences have been heavy crosses for him to bear and have weighed him down, and yet there still seem to be sparks of life and hope within him. He can still recall when he possessed many of the wind's powers and qualities. So, in the fourth stanza or fourth canto, we talk about how West Wind has been compared and contrasted with the religious or humanistic perspective of लाइफ एंड डेथ का जो साइकिल है वो यहाँ पर डिपिक्ट हुआ है, दैट हाउ क्राइस्ट गेव हिज लाइफ up in order to revitalize the fundamental understandings of Christianity within the people of his age. Then line 57 to 70 is the canto fifth. If stanza 4th is the explanation of why the west wind is being invoked, stanza 5 is the prayer itself. So stanza 4th is that why it is being invoked, because it wants to disseminate the understanding and comprehension of human life and the importance of human life. That is your canto 4, but canto 5 is a prayer itself. So in front of canto 5 you can write that it is a prayer. The requests of the speaker seem to gather speed much as the wind does. While he begins by asking to be moved by the wind, he soon asks to become one with this power. If you remember, Wordsworth wanted to become one with nature. Coleridge wanted to become one with nature. They actually do not see nature and humans apart. For them, it has to go in a parallel manner. It has to go simultaneously. Again, if we go to Shelley, he's doing the same. His speaker of the poem, his poetic persona of the poem is asking nature to take or weight it up or take him as it is as one entity. So he, the speaker wants, who is the worshipper of nature, wants to become one with nature over here. As a breeze might ignite a glowing coal, the speaker asked for the wind to breathe new life into him and his poetic art. Again, in the beginning, in the very first few lines, he does talk about the forgotten books and the ghost writers. And in the last canto, we get another connection to the same thing, where he's talking about that how poetic art has been evolving and the particular type of poetic art has been forgotten. With his last question, the speaker reminds his audience that change is on the horizon, be it personal, natural, artistic, or political. So, the conclusion of the poem, the ending canto or the stanza of the poem talks about how everything is changing. The way west wind changes its direction from east to west, similarly, all these natural phenomena or man-made phenomena, they change. They have ups and downs. They have chaos, they have happinesses, they have everything, and he's saying that the change is on the horizon, and without the change civilizations cannot go on. Change is permanent. If a civilization or group of people, they refuse to change, they become stagnant, and if they become stagnant, they are outdated, and if they are outdated, they are out of the race. Life is a race of different peoples and communities. Would you agree with me? Right? Everybody is struggling for their identity or their personal identity, their understanding, and etc. So the west wind changes the course of natural phenomena, and this west wind also brings all the changes within the human lives as well, in the fronts of personal, natural, artistic, and political or societal, etc. The lyre referred to in line 57 might be the Aeolian lyre or harp. Its name derived from Elois, god of the winds. I hope you know what's harp. वो होता है ना वैसे चलाते हैं ऐसे, उसमें स्ट्रिंग्स लगी होती हैं और उसको प्ले करते हैं. आपको गिटार पता होगा, लेकिन एक हार्प होता था जिसमें ये एंजल्स जाती थी एंड दे यूज्ड टू प्ले. ये गॉडली एंजल्स होती थी और गॉड्स के लिए प्ले किया जाता था. हैव यू एवर सीन इट? In the movies, perhaps you have seen it. Live to मैंने भी नहीं देखा हुआ. So this lyre is a box with strings stretched across an opening. When the wind moves through it, the Ionian harp emits musical sounds. अच्छा वो wind chimes तो होंगे आपके घर में होते हैं ना you know what's our wind chimes वो जो आप हवा में लटकाते हैं वो कोई गुजरता है हवा गुजरती है तो वो बजते रहते हैं तो उस तरह का एक म्यूजिक प्रोड्यूस करता है ये हार्प लेकिन कोई कर नहीं रहा वो नेचुरल हवा है जो ये कर रही है द वेस्ट विंड इज एक्चुअली प्रोड्यूसिंग दिस साउंड. Many romantic writers include Coleridge in his poem Aeolian Harp used the instrument as a symbol of human imagination that is played upon by a greater power, that greater power being natural power. Here the speaker asks to be west wind's lyre, its means of music and communication. Now look at line 58 to 62. What if my leaves are falling like its own? The tumult of thy mighty harmonies will take from both a deep autumnal tone, sweet thou in sadness, be thou spirit fierce, my spirit be thou me impetuous one. Here the speaker seems to accept his sorrows and sufferings. He realizes that the wind's power may allow him to add harmony to autumn's music. He is still sad, but he recognizes the sweetness in his pain. He is part of a natural cycle and will have chance to begin again as both man and poet. The speaker's growing strength is hinted at by the powerful exclamation in lines 61 and 62. You see the exclamations where he uses my spirit, be thou me, impetuous one. So all these exclamations are showing his sudden emotions, intense emotions. Right? Then line 63 to 64. Drive my dead thoughts over the universe like withered leaves to quicken a new birth. The wind blew leaves over the forest floor, fertilizing the soil. Now the speaker asks the wind to scatter his time-worn ideas and writing across the earth in hopes of inspiring new thoughts and works. Note that the wordplay on leaves, which can be found either on trees or in books. As you know for a fact that in the first stanza and in the beginning of the last stanza, the canto, he mentions about the forgotten books and the poets and the artistic loss. Again, he's referring to the same thing that he still has time and he's gonna rebirth or take the stance of writing or becoming a artistic poet. He is hopeful over here. He's not being pessimistic. He believes that with every ending there is a beginning. With every death there is a new birth. With every night there is going to be a morning. This is the contrast that he's trying to portray over here. Then line 65 to 67. And by the incantation of this verse, scatter as from the unextinguished hearth, ashes and sparks, my words among mankind. In defense of poetry, Shelley wrote that the mind in creation is a fading coal, which some invisible influence, like an in contrast wind, awakens to transitory brightness. In asking the wind to fan and hopefully arouse the dying embers of the words, the speaker seems to be echoing this idea. It's asking the wind, the speaker is asking the wind to blow it for them so that they can move, his words can move, his poetic form can move and evolve and be disseminated among people. So it is not only about the nature, now it is about himself as well. As a poet, he wants to be heard and accepted, and we have read about his turmoil and tumult, that he was unable to land good projects because many critics did not approve of his writing or accepted him wholeheartedly. So perhaps, and this is the poem that he wrote out of that rejection. Once he was rejected by critics, he was definitely sensitive and emotional, and he wrote this, and it truly depicts what he felt. And time and again, he mentions his poetic journey as well, that he wants the west wind to bring that wind so that his words can be disseminated among masses and he can be heard. Then line 65 to 67 is done. Then 68 to 69. Be through my lips to unawakened earth the trumpet of prophecy, O wind. These lines recalls the angels of clarion of line 10. Again, a reference made to the earlier part of the poem. Awakening the earth from wintry slumber, the speaker here asks to become the poet prophet of the new season of renewal. 1069 to 70. The trumpet of a prophecy of wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind. Shelley originally framed the last two lines as a statement, phrased as the question. The poem ends on a note of expectancy rather than affirmation. The speaker has made his case and plea to assist the wind in the declaration of a new age, but he has not yet received any information about it. So this is the ending of the poem. All in all, we get to know through Ode to the West Wind that it is a journey of natural phenomena, the journey of the poet himself, the journey of humankind, the journey of everything that is affected by everything around it. It is an eco-critical poem as well. How is it eco-critical? Because it is speaking out loudly that it is based on how different natural phenomena, they are able to be affected and are able to affect other things within the surroundings as well, on abstract level and in the physical form. On both levels, everything is affecting everything else around it. So, I hope you have understood. I've tried to make it as concise as possible. I've just read from what I have sent you so that you don't have to worry about layers of explanations. Now, I'm giving you 5 minutes to take a look on the text. इसको देखें, पढ़ें और उसके बाद कैंटो वाइज आपने मुझे 4 लाइन में बताना है क्या हो रहा है, ठीक है? आपके पास वो मटेरियल भी तो है, वहाँ से देख लें, नो प्रॉब्लम. वहाँ से नहीं देखना तो आप कैंटो वाइज समरी ओपन कर सकते हैं. यू कैन यूज़ योर इंटरनेट एंड योर मोबाइल, दैट्स फाइन. जस्ट रीड एंड गो विद द फ्लो. आई हैव अपलोडेड अ प्रेजेंटेशन फ्रॉम प्रीवियस क्लास. आपके जो गूगल क्लासरूम में मैंने एक पावर पॉइंट अपलोड की होगी, जो कि पिछली जो मेरी क्लास थी उनमें से किसी ग्रुप ने प्रेजेंट की थी. इट्स वेरी वेल रिटन, बहुत कंसाइज करके लिखा है, वहाँ से भी आप पढ़ सकते हैं, ठीक है? So 5 to 10 minutes are given to you to go through this and then we discuss further. इसमें और क्या क्या हमने एड्रेस करना है.